I don't know if you're a runner. I don't know if you're a jogger. I don't know if you like to run or like to jog, but I'm 41, and a few years ago, I started getting healthy for the first time in my life, and I started running. And you know what? For the most part, I love it. But I go to a gym called Orange Theory, and we do these 1-hour classes, and we spend time on the treadmill, we spend time on a rower, and on the floor. Now, every year they do this challenge called Marathon Month. And Marathon Month is to see how far you can run over the course of the month. How much distance on the treadmill can you accumulate in the classes? Now, 2 years ago, I signed up for this challenge, and it's my first time doing it, and I ran like hell. I did so well. I made myself really, really proud because I focused all of my time and all of my energy on running as fast as I can, as far as I can, as many days in a row as possible. But guess what? I injured myself. Naturally, I injured myself because I'm running for 31 days straight and I've never done that before. But I pushed through the pain, I hobbled my way across the finish line, and I won the challenge. And while I got a lot healthier, my cardio improved and I felt a lot better, I did injure myself and it set me back. It really actually hurt me. It took a few months to recover. Now, Marathon Month is happening again. Right now it's happening. And this time, I'm approaching it a lot smarter. At the time of recording this, I'm a week and a half in to the challenge, and I've already surpassed my goal. And I've done that because I'm managing today's run and I'm managing tomorrow's run. I'm showing up to perform today, but I also can't push myself so hard that I can't perform tomorrow, and I can't perform the day after that and the day after that. And I was thinking about this because as business owners, we've got drive. We've got grit. We've got the ability to make the impossible possible through sheer willpower. But we can only do that for so long. We can only run on that treadmill day after day after day so hard for so long before we injure ourselves. Or in this case, in the case of business, before we burn out. And that is exactly what we're going to explore with today's guest, Julie B. Now, Julie is the founder of Be Smart Social Media. She's an award-winning podcast host. She's a professional speaker and also the author of the book, Burned: How Business Owners Can Overcome Burnout and Fuel Success. Now, I've known Julie for, maybe 2 years now. We've been able to connect on each other's podcasts, and she has an amazing background. And when I heard that she was working on this book about burnout specifically for business owners, I had to have her on the podcast because I have found when it comes to business growth, when it comes to sales, when it comes to all the things that's required of us as leaders in our businesses, we have two approaches. Our default approach is to run like hell the way that I did the first time on the treadmill and go hard as fast as you can, day after day after day after day, until finally you wind up burnt out. Or there's a second approach, one that I've learned after injuring myself and burning myself out and learning the hard way, to manage today so that way you can also show up tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. Now, Julie's been featured in Fast Company, she's been featured in Forbes and Thrive Global, and really recognized for her contributions to the small business community. And today she's on the podcast to share strategies on how you can recognize and deal with burnout, how you can maintain a healthy work-life balance, and how you can find the support networks we need as business leaders to make sure that we can get through burnout or manage burnout so it does not slow us down. And so welcome to How to Sell More, the sales podcast for non-salespeople, where each week we give a masterclass to help ambitious B2B leaders like you tackle the number one challenge all businesses face, and that's growing revenue. I'm Mark Drager. Let's get into it. So Julie, on your website, I couldn't help but notice that you have this big, bold headline that says, being an entrepreneur is hard. Like, no kidding.
Yes.
I want to start there. I mean, welcome to the show, but being an entrepreneur is hard. You have been an entrepreneur for a long time. I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years now. We both spend all day, every day working with business owners. It is really hard.
Very, very hard. It's one of the harder professions, I think, to pick it as a career. And you don't really know it until you get into it, until you're doing it. But it is, I tell you what, the entrepreneurs I know that have been at it for a decade or longer are probably some of the most resilient people I know.
And that's part of what I love about it, because it almost becomes a bit of a badge of honor at a
Hmm.
certain point. I can't think of another career or profession other than I do have friends who were professional athletes, and I know people who have done very, very well for themselves, let's say on the entertainment side or what have you.
Hmm.
And I think that if you're a professional athlete, you know that you're surrounded by the best coaches, the best resources. I mean, the organizations that you're playing for will put everything behind you to make sure that you are the best of the best. And honestly, I think entrepreneurship is the only other opportunity or career where we get to decide who is on our team, who is for us, what resources do we need for us to be our best and to be able to really perform. And then you go through the grind and you win or you lose, and then you pick yourself back up and you keep going. I don't know of any other career that does that. Do you?
No, and I've done some other careers in my past, so I know that this is one of those rare. I feel like just being an entrepreneur, you kind of get into this rare air kind of club, and then the longer you're in it, the more of that you get into, the people that you surround yourself with, and people who have been in business for 15 years, just or more. I love talking to those individuals because their perspective on everything, business or non-business, just always fascinates me. So
Now, I'm going down this path. Listener,
yeah.
if you're like, wow, Mark, you seem really optimistic today. I thought this episode was on burnout. What are you talking about? I mean, I can't help but overlook the fact that the very strengths are our weaknesses. The fact
Hmm.
that we will keep going, that we will get back up, that we will get knocked down, that we will build for ourselves a structure, a team, processes that aren't quite perfect, but we'll jump in and we'll roll up our sleeves and we do what we need to do and we make it happen. And what I did not realize until I met you, and you were nice enough to have me on your podcast, I did not realize that after 15 years of running an organization, I was so burnt out.
Hmm.
And you and I met 3 or 4 years after I decided to burn my entire company to the ground, because I hit the point, and I've spoken with some other business owners, and this is what I'd love for you to share with us today. But I've hit the point in my business, and I've heard other business owners as well, where you just go, going into work is not fun. It's not even that it's not fun. It's just like, it is such a terrible period where you are disappointed or you're upset or you're apologizing or you're not living up to expectations or you're making mistakes or you've worked so hard and you think things should be further along than they are, or you've built stuff and then they've crumbled. And it's just like, when I hit the point where, frankly, I did not care whether it succeeded or failed, no amount of money could get me to go into the office. I would come back from vacation and I'd be driving in the whole time thinking, I do not want to go here. I do not want to do this. I did not realize that was coming from just the fact that I was burnt out.
And most business owners go through something like that in their careers as entrepreneurs. And I will say, I think it comes from we are high achievers. I don't think I've met an entrepreneur that hasn't had that gear in them. I don't know how else to describe it. And unlike professional athletes, though, I think we are a special group of individuals who we kind of go into it knowing we are going to fail more than we win. But the wins, we hope and we bet on the wins being much bigger than any of the failures that we ever had to make up for it. So I think when you have that gear and it's just go, go, go. And then, we don't have a boss to say, hey, you are burning the candle at both ends. There's nobody above us. Who do you go to when you're burned out, when you're a business owner? There's nobody to go talk to. There's no, even if you do have an HR arm of your business, you don't want to go talk to them. So there's also this level of shame that comes with it. And when I was doing my research for my book, it shocked me how much burnout equals failure in the minds of a lot of business owners before they go through it the first time. They don't ever want to admit that they're burned out because in some ways they think that that's a failure, which I don't think that that's true at all. And I think as entrepreneurs, we just have to be aware of, we're wired this way. We go after it really hard, and burnout is not a failure. It's often something that comes after a massive success. That's the other big thing that I've seen in my research is a lot of the times burnout happens after a huge, huge win, which makes sense because you're working so hard to get there. But you have to have some ways to deal with it. You have to have some ways to deal with it when you go through it and then figure out how to prevent it and hopefully not go through it again, at least to the extent of some of the stories that I've heard and my own story about going to the emergency room with it and all that came with that. But you've got to catch it. My hope is to catch it before it gets to the point where you want to burn your business to the ground.
And that is why I wanted to have you on the podcast. You have just 100% articulated why. Because, the whole idea behind How to Sell More is we want to be able to help anyone who's listening figure out how to fix the revenue challenges in your business. And maybe that's lead gen, or maybe that's working the leads, or maybe it's your team or systems or processes or marketing or positioning or whatever it is. We can go on, and we're going to go on because we have many episodes ahead of us.
Yeah.
But I thought when you came to me and you said, hey, Mark, I want to talk about my new book, Burned, how business owners can overcome burnout and fuel success. And I was lucky enough that you sent me an advanced copy. I read it while I was on vacation with my wife in Scotland last fall, and I read it on the plane ride home. And so it's a fantastic book because, one, I've never thought of this again. I've never come across this, and I've never read a book on this. And it hits so hard, and yet it was so easy for me to work through. Anyway, I'm a really big fan of yours. For anyone listening, you can hear, I'm a really big fan. But what the heck does getting burned out have to do with selling more? And it's like, if you are going to take 10 steps forward and push and push and push and push, but you hit the place where you're like, fuck it, none of this is worth it. Mm-hmm. That's not sustainable, and that's not going to carry you for the long term. And I had to take 2 years off, honestly. And you know what? I read about J.D. Rockefeller. I'm a huge fan of J.D. Rockefeller, Standard Oil. His book Titan by Ron Chernow is amazing. But guess what? At 31, he pushed and pushed and pushed so hard, he had to take 2.5 years off. Yeah. He had to step back from his business. Now, if you're a business owner and you are feeling stressed, or you're feeling burnt out, or you're feeling all the things we're going to talk about today, what is the point of working so hard and pushing so hard if you're going to hit that wall and decide that you're just going to walk away from everything? I mean, that's no good. So help us understand if we're not quite sure. I wasn't sure. You winded up in the hospital, so you didn't know you were burnt out. What are some of the signs that we may be facing burnout?
Yeah, and I break it down into 3 stages in my book. The first, and it goes attentional, emotional, and then physical. And I think when we think about burnout, physical is what we think about the first time around. That's I can't get out of bed. I'm sick all the time. I'm in the emergency room for who knows what, those types of things. But attentional is where it really first starts. And that's when you have a hard time focusing. You have a hard time having a coherent thought with your team, having conversations. You can kind of catch it there. But then if you don't catch it there, it tends to go down to the emotional level, which is you're irritable, you're frustrated, you're angry. You wake up and you're angry and you're like, I don't know why I'm angry. I have to go to the office today and that's making me angry. Those types of things start to happen. And then if you don't catch it there, then you get into the physical stuff where you're tired, you're sick, you're getting injured. I know some people who have gotten random injuries and they didn't know what was going on, or your back hurts, and there's just no answer to that. And it's all because you have this overwhelming stress that you cannot see an end to. That's kind of how I define burnout. There's a lot of definitions for it, but for business owners, I think it's when you have overwhelming stress and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're like, this is my everyday. I don't see this ever ending. No matter how many people I hire, no matter how much I automate, there's always going to be something. When you feel like that, you're really getting close to burnt out.
Sometimes I feel like that 2 or 3 times a week. maybe that's just fear and anxiety and not necessarily burnout. And so I was curious though, I mean, I know you went through your own journey, but why write this book? Like, why dedicate a year or 2 of your life to this very theme, this very topic? Because writing a book's no easy feat.
No, it's the way that I've gone, it's at least a 5-year commitment. So okay. I'll just start out with that. And I didn't do that going in, but it's a commitment of at least half a decade. So I had burned out once in the past. That was pretty epic. And the second time that I had my burnout, I knew it was going to happen. My friends were telling me, Julie, you're going to burn out if you don't stop. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm just really busy. I just got to get through this, just got to get through that. And then, I basically had a panic attack, thought I was having a heart attack, went to the emergency room, got out of the emergency room, and took about 2 solid straight weeks off from work. My team was great about it, but I started looking for resources online. Mark, there was nothing specifically for business owners and entrepreneurs. And this was August/September of 2021. So we had already gone through the first round of COVID. You would think that there would have been something about burnout for business owners. I couldn't find anything specifically for us. And the more I researched, the conversations were do less and take a vacation. Well, that's great. But when you come back, telling a business owner who's burned out to take a vacation is probably some of the worst advice you can give that business owner, in my opinion. So I just started documenting my process, and I did research and read a lot about how other books and other experts approach burnout. And I was like, there needs to be something that speaks specifically to entrepreneurs and business owners. I mean, that's why I wrote the book, because I've seen my friends go out of business because of burnout. I've seen 7-figure businesses go out of business because the business owner got burned out and got to a place where they couldn't get out of the business. So they literally walked away from it. That happens way more than it should. And I think if we can just kind of accept that we're probably going to burn out as business owners and plan for it. We've got plans for sales. We've got marketing plans. Why not have a strategy around burnout as well? If you know it's probably going to happen, plan for it. And hopefully we won't have to have businesses going out of business because the business owner burned out and there's just no coming back from that sometimes.
And I want to get into those strategies. Mm-hmm. But if you're listening and you're thinking, because this is what kept me trapped for a bunch of years, I'm running a multi-million-dollar marketing agency. I have families and employees and people counting on me. I have to have projects coming in to make payroll, and I need payroll to deliver on the projects. And when you have, for me, I don't have an MBA. I never went to college. I never went to university. I'm a guy who at a young age started getting into this and have just learned by making mistakes. Mm-hmm. But this was the first time that I found myself on this hamster wheel where I was even saying to someone for like a year or two, I would say to people, I have this machine that I have to keep fed. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to slow the machine down to fix the things that are wrong with it. And I just don't know what to do. Like, I have to keep the hamster wheel going. And if I slow down, if I take a break, if I take my foot off the gas, the whole thing will fly apart and crumble. I didn't realize that's not true until I did some hard things and made some hard decisions and had to deconstruct things, and I had to let clients go, and I had to avoid lawsuits, and I had to face a lot. I put it off way too long, but I didn't realize that you can actually do this. So what would be the tips? What would be the strategies? You mentioned that you started documenting your approach. If we're feeling this right now and we think it's all or nothing, help us understand why it isn't all or nothing.
I think that we have red flags, we have triggers that if we know what those are, we can know if we're approaching burnout. And I'll give you an example. So sleep is something that's just, universal. We all need to sleep. Most of us, I guess, all of us need to sleep. I need 8 hours of sleep a night. Okay. If I go and I have a tracker, I track all of this. So if I go, let's say 2 weeks where I'm not getting an average of 8 hours a night of sleep, I know I'm about halfway to full on burnout. Now that may not be, for everybody, but we all do things in our day-to-day life that indicate we're healthy and we're, taking care of everything and we're not going to approach burnout, or we might be approaching burnout. So my first piece of advice is, one, know what that looks like for you. Know what your baseline is. Just like you go to the doctor and you get blood work done, you have things in your life that your baseline. And if you get too far off of that.
Most entrepreneurs do that. Do they? I don't go to the doctor. I don't trust them. I don't get blood work done. Hold on. Is that a thing that we all do?
As you get older, you do. I don't know. At least, but so that's actually one unique sign for me of burnout is when I start canceling doctor's appointments. If I start putting off doctor's appointments, for example, just my yearly physical, if I start pushing that back and putting that off, I'm like, there's something going on here because I'm not taking care of this thing that is important to me. Now, some people don't but there's if you normally exercise every day, or if you one thing that I always measure is how, if I have a laugh with my partner every day. Like that's something, like if we go longer than a few days without having like a hearty laugh, like, okay, something's off with me and I need to, get back to that. So it's different for everybody, but I think that it starts with, most business owners like to measure, like to have KPIs. I look at this as a KPI. It's, what are your key performance indicators and measurements that you are at your baseline level, and what does burnout look like? And then if you start to slide towards that, I mean, half of this is just knowing what it looks like on you. You've got to know what burnout looks like on you, and you want to try to catch it in those two phases, the attentional and the emotional, before you get to the point where you can't get out of bed. So I think that that's a big part of it, is just knowing what it looks like. People ask me what's one or two pieces of advice I'd give. That's one of them. The other part would be, you've got to have a support group, and support is different than networking. That's something I'm really big on right now, is the difference between support groups and networking groups in business, because we may join a networking group and they may say it's, you can get support here, but do you really feel comfortable walking into that group talking about the shit that's going on in your business? Most of us don't. So you've got to have a group of people, other entrepreneurs, not your spouse, not your best friend, people who know business that you can talk to. And I tell people, you could walk into that room and say, I'm going bankrupt, or I've got a bestseller, and they're going to treat you the same. That's what your support group should look like.
I'm part of a few groups, but recently I joined a group called Genius Network. That's Joe Polish's group, and it's out of Phoenix. And it's interesting. He posed this question, and I don't know if this is his question or someone else's, but a few meetings ago, he had us all take 5 minutes, and he said, I want you to write down every single person in your life where if you called them up, no questions asked, he said, I need 25 grand. They would say, okay, I got you. Now, it's not a question of whether they have the 25 grand or not. It's a question of whether you're close enough to be able to call them up and say, I need this. No questions asked, and they trust you, and they're there for you, and you have them or not. And I started writing a list, and it actually surprised me. I was like, wow, like I think I had like 8 or 9 people on my list, collection of friends and family and business owners and other people. And I thought, wow, I am well supported. Mm-hmm. I never ask them for help. And I never give them the chance to help me, or I never reach out to them, or I never, like, doing this exercise, I realized these names were here. And I think the purpose of the exercise was to show the importance of the people. Yeah. But what struck me is I never reach out and ask for help.
Why don't you? What do you think it is?
That's not this podcast. No, why don't I?
I can guess what it is, but we could go to different.
No. That's okay. Why don't I? Is because I'm the personality type that wants to fix things and wants to diagnose things and wants to get better. I've been doing that for a few years now, post burnout. Mm-hmm. I've questioned a lot. I've had a lot of clarity. And now I'm in the point where it's not time to talk about it. It's just time to do it.
Do it. Yeah.
And so maybe I'm rationalizing that even in the doing, I still need that support and help. Yeah. But I don't need to spend time with people talking about what could be. It's like, cool, we've done that. Let's go. It's action time now. And that is actually where I get more stressed and burned out. Now that this is a therapy session. Now that I'm talking to you about this, like, I get more worried in the action. Most entrepreneurs don't. Most entrepreneurs are fine with action, and they run into problems because I don't think they strategize enough. Mm-hmm. I am really good at strategizing. Mm-hmm. And I get very, very concerned in the action. And so that's probably where I do need to reach out more and give people more opportunity to help me.
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, you're kind of different because I think most entrepreneurs get into analysis paralysis. They overthink. They want things to be perfect.
No. Don't get me wrong. That's me. 100% perfectionist. I analyze everything. I think of every which way. I come up with something. In January, I wrote at one of these meetings, I wrote in my note, just pick something and stick with it. And someone else looked at my book and went, that's great advice. You should do that. It doesn't matter what you pick. Just go.
Just do it. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that's probably the most famous slogan ever. But I think part of the reason what you're describing is possibly we come to work every morning, and it doesn't matter how many people you have working for you, what you've delegated. I feel like, I work with business owners who are solopreneurs all the way up to people who have, 50 employees or more. And we come to work every day riding 15 different trains. We wear all of these hats all of the time. And I think sometimes when you get into what you're talking about, I think sometimes you just need somebody to say, this is the hat you need to be wearing right now. This is the thing you need to be working on today. Because if you're constantly, you got sales, you got marketing, you got HR, you got all these things going on, you got your team, you got leadership, you got all of these things going on. Every single day we walk in the door wearing all of those hats. And it's really, I haven't seen a business owner that's able to delegate everything, because I feel like once you get one thing off your plate, something else comes on your plate, or you do more of something else. You go deeper into the leadership role or deeper into the sales role, whatever it is. I think that's what you're talking about, is when you have, you know what your mission is, you know what your vision is, but you still have to, you're riding 15 different trains. You're like, which train do I get on today? And that decision by itself that can be mentally exhausting, just to decide, what am I doing today?
I've learned over the last few months, actually, I've been practicing this. Yeah. We're recording this on a Monday. Yesterday, I turned to my wife. It was a rainy day here, and I had planned to work outside. And I said, oh, it's raining. I don't know if I should do this thing on the business, do this thing for our family, or do this thing on in the basement on the house. And she was like, oh, you should probably do that thing on the basement of the house. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Right, but it helped.
Yeah.
I was like, no. In that reaction time, I was like, oh no, I don't actually want to work. It's not a priority right now. Never mind. And with my COO and with others, what a great opportunity to be able to surround yourself with people where I can come to them and say, like, listen, I have 17 different things I can work on, and I can come up with the pros and cons or the business case for each, and they're all really important, and I'm not quite sure what to do. And so if you don't have that person on your leadership team, or you're not part of a mastermind group where you have the opportunity to do that, I would definitely recommend connecting with a productivity coach, connecting with a business coach, connecting with someone where they can at least help you prioritize the areas of focus, because we can't fix it. We can't fix it from the inside. As much as I can help other entrepreneurs, other business owners, and give them great strategy and great tips, I cannot figure this stuff out for myself, and it drives me crazy.
It's perspective. You've got to have people who, no matter who it is, whether it's leadership team, coach, whoever, you've got to have other people who are able to give you perspective on what's going on. But in order to get that perspective, you've got to be willing to open up and share with them what is actually going on in your business, so that they can help you. I think that's one of the things that causes burnout for business owners, is we are hesitant to open up and be vulnerable, rightfully so. Nobody wants to be, the Eeyore of the group, but sometimes you're the Eeyore. Sometimes you need that support. And my thing is, just pay it forward, be the person when your friend needs to be the Eeyore, the person who's just having the struggles, be the person who's there to say, okay, it's all right, we're going to get through this. I went through this, or I know somebody who went through this, and pick them up and help them out. I think that's a big part of it, though, is we've got to be able to put the ego down to be able to get the help, and to be vulnerable enough to ask for, the help that we need when we're facing burnout.
The last question I have for you is around the idea of leverage. Mm-hmm. Part of what I was talking about, professional athletes and entrepreneurs and us getting better. I mean, every breakthrough I've had, I'll speak for myself, has come on the other side of having to face the uncomfortable decisions, the uncomfortable letdowns. I mean, those terrible events shape and inform my thinking to be better and be able to show up better next time. So obviously growth mentality, but you mentioned that there's the opportunity to leverage these breakthroughs that you uncover when you're dealing with burnout. So we've talked about pre-burnout, we've talked about how to avoid burnout, but how do you leverage burnout to be able to come out of it on the other side even stronger and even better?
You have to pay attention to the things that come up as you're going through it, and make note of those things. There's always silver linings. I think in every massive failure or burnout, you are going to have some things that come up that you're like, I need to pay attention to this or that, or this made me feel a certain way, or I never want to experience that again. Or, I mean, for me, it was, there's nothing out there for business owners and burnout. I'm going to write a book about this. I think if we can start looking at it as on the other side of it, there's usually opportunity. And it starts with while you're going through it, just paying attention to that. But I think if you're going through it, that's the silver lining, is there's going to be something great on the other side of it. as long as you're paying attention as you go through it. And that also helps you get through it too, in some ways. If you know, like, whatever's on the other side of this is going to be better and I'm going to be in such a good place after this, it helps you go through it more. It just makes it easier to get to the other side and have something to look forward to. But got to pay attention to what comes out while you're going through it and listen to it. Don't ignore those gut instincts that come up and guide you certain ways.
So that was the conversation I had with Julie B. To wrap up, I'm going to share my 3 biggest takeaways from this talk. Number 1, burnout shows itself in 3 different ways. The first is difficulty focusing. It's going to rob you of your attention. Number 2, it's going to make you irritable and frustrated. It's going to really affect you emotionally. And number 3, you are going to feel tired all the time. You're going to have health issues. You're going to be completely set back because it's affecting you physically. Recognizing these early signs is really, really critical to understand if you are currently in burnout, if you're approaching burnout, and to really help you from avoiding full-blown burnout where you have to take a full break from your business. Number 2, self-awareness and understanding how to prevent burnout is so, so important. So just as regular checkups for our health are important, entrepreneurs, we should be periodically assessing our mental health and our emotional health. So simple practices like maintaining sleep patterns, ensuring we have regular exercise, we're drinking enough water, engaging in these types of activities can help bring joy and help prevent a little bit of burnout. But more than that, we have to be able to manage our expectations of output and our efficiencies and how hard we work day after day after day. And at the end of the day, if you're having a really rough time or really rough day, give yourself a break. Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't expect so much of yourself and of others. Just think about how much further you can go if you go consistently than if you go full out and then have to take a massive break. And number 3, you should have a rough plan, a strategic plan for dealing with potential burnout, as it may come up from time to time. And having a burnout plan, as you can call it, is just as important as a sales or marketing plan. And so this includes setting realistic goals and delegating tasks and incorporating regular breaks and vacations into your schedule. So that way you can manage your energy, you can manage your output, and you can manage your expectations. So there you have it. Those were my 3 biggest takeaways from this talk. But I'm curious, what were yours? Anything challenge your perspective? Anything you'd like to add to the conversation? Let's dive deeper over on LinkedIn, where I like to spark a conversation and share some more insights and ideas over on the platform. My name is Mark Drager, and you can find my contact details in the episode show notes. Now, while you're over on LinkedIn, be sure to give my friend Julie B a follow for more authentic and valuable content. You can check out her website, thejulieb, and that's BEE.com. You can get a copy of her book, Burned: How Business Owners Can Overcome Burnout and Fuel Success, everywhere books are available. And one last thing, if you've made it this far into the show, you really should subscribe. And here's why. Each and every week, we share actionable strategies and tips, just like what we talked about today with Julie, to be able to supercharge your business growth and fuel sales. I'm Mark Drager. I'll catch you in the next episode.